I made a cult, but not the kind you'd want to join. See, if you were tormented your entire life, would you fight back? Many of you loved my character Louise, the fire-wielding loner surviving alone in a snowy forest from my last one-shot, The Mask of Ashes. But I never explained why she was alone to begin with. This all begins on the night of her birth, when her older brother Aniko lost everything to save her. Aniko was born at noon, where the sun peaked in the sky. He was lucky, as he was raised into a community that despised the moonborn, believing they were born with an automatic advantage in life. Their gifts, granted at birth, were seen as unfair, and resentment toward them ran deep within the community. At the age of 5, Aniko's life changed forever when his younger sister Louise was born under the full moon. The villagers saw her arrival as both a curse and an insult. They had gathered outside their house, torches flickering and pitchforks raised, their faces tense with disgust and hatred. Aniko's father stepped forward calmly, a man known for his kindness and knowledge, someone the whole village trusted and relied on in times of need. His wife often got annoyed because he was too friendly, worried he might be taken advantage of, yet she could not help but admire his heart. His generosity rarely went unnoticed. Baskets of food, bundles of clothing, or other small gifts would often arrive at their doorstep, proof that their good hearts always brought their own reward. Aniko watched him with admiration, chuckling when his father winked at his mother. A small, cheeky gesture that reminded her why she had fallen in love with him. While staying in his parents' room with his mother and newborn sister, Aniko's mom urged him to look out the window, wondering where his father had gone and what all the commotion outside could be. But Aniko could not form a single word. His eyes froze on the horrifying scene. The villagers he had once grown to love were mercilessly driving their pitchforks into his father. All the while, it was as if his father's only crime had been the timing of his child's birth, born at night. With his father gone and his mother too exhausted from giving birth to move, Aniko was urged to leave her behind, take Louise, and escape through his father's underground fishing passage. In reality, it was actually a hidden wine cellar with an exit. Aniko had discovered the cellar the day he caught his father drinking alone by the river. His father was only allowed 1 glass of wine at dinner, but he loved it too much to stop there. He drank in secret, carefully hiding it from his wife and his kid. The passage, which led straight to the river, was said to be for fishing, but Aniko couldn't help but laugh quietly to himself, amused by his father's little rebellion and unaware that this was simply the one moment he truly had to himself. The secret escape route now served a different purpose. Aniko wrapped his newborn sister Louise in as many quilted blankets as he could find, hoping to protect her from the flames consuming their home. Before slipping out through the cellar, he used a cork from one of his father's wine bottles as a makeshift pacifier, so she wouldn't cry and alert the villagers. Then, taking the fishing basket his father once carried to the river, Aniko carefully placed Louise inside and set her adrift, praying the current would carry her to safety. With his sister hopefully out of harm's way, Aniko turned back toward the burning house. His mother had told him to leave her, but he couldn't. He ran inside, the heat clawing at his skin, and flames devoured everything around him. Coughing and desperate, he stumbled towards his parents' room, only to find the fire had already claimed her. As the walls began to collapse, a strong hand grabbed his shoulder. An older man pulled him from the blaze. He was the village's high priest. With his family gone, Aniko probably felt like the last man on Earth. Kind of reminds me of Noah, the last surviving Earthling, a guy who escaped the destruction of humanity aboard an alien ship in the last book by Hungry Minds. Opening it for the first time, you can immediately feel the quality of the book in your hands. Flipping through the pages feels like stepping into someone's private sketchbook and journal all at once. There is even an intentionally torn page, just like my own sketchbook. Details like these make the last book feel so authentic. With the holidays coming up, the last book and the book make for an unforgettable gift for yourself or anyone close to you. Imagine holding these books together on a cozy winter night. reading it for the first time, or discovering something you missed previously. Lucky for you, Hungry Minds has special Christmas bundles currently on their website, so you can pick up either one or both books at a holiday price. And the best part, my promo code even works on the bundles, which gives you an extra discount on top of it. If you would like to experience reading it for yourself, you can find the last book through the link in the description or by scanning the QR code on screen. Make sure to use my code WIMOSKA to get 10% off your purchase. Thank you Hungry Minds for sponsoring this video. The High Priest was a figure who held authority much like a mayor. He despised the Moonborn, yet he was not cruel enough to slaughter an entire family for it. He believed only the newborn should be eliminated, not the bloodline. With Aniko as the only survivor, the High Priest took him in, seeing it as an act of control rather than mercy, preventing Aniko to save Louise from the river. Now an orphan, Aniko began to learn the ways of the Golden Chapel. As an atheist, he never truly understood the deep faith that guided everyone in his village. The people worshipped the sun and despised anything connected to the moon. No one knew what had become of Louise, and most believed she had perished with her mother. But Aniko carried a rage that led him to attack the priests several times, blaming them for influencing the mob that destroyed his family. The priests, however, did not tolerate defiance. Despite their frail and aged appearance, they were masters of both martial arts and weaponry. When Aniko lashed out, they used their methods to silence him, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days. Aniko had nowhere to go, and even when he tried to escape, the priest never allowed him to leave the chapel. As the years passed, he grew stronger. They refused to teach him their martial arts, fearing that one day he might surpass them and turn against them. And they weren't wrong to think that. He began training in secret, alone in his room at night, moving in silence beneath the pale glow of the moon. He often thought of his sister, wondering if she had survived the river, and blamed himself for possibly killing her through his own carelessness. One night, a sudden spark of light swept through the chapel, flickering in perfect silence. Peering through the bars of his small window, Aniko froze as he saw the head priest ignite every candle without so much as a spark or a match. At first, he thought it was a trick of the flame, but when he narrowed his gaze, pressing his left eye to the cold iron bars, the truth revealed itself. The head priest was a moonborn incantation user, able to summon fire at will, his true nature hidden from everyone. For a moment, Aniko could not move. Then, terror took hold. He screamed with everything in him, shouting the secret into the night. The other priests burst in his room, faces twisted with fury at his attempt to defame their revered leader. They forced him to the floor, pinning him down as he struggled and thrashed. One of them ripped out his eye that had seen the secret. They then pressed a red-hot branding iron to the wound to prevent bleeding, burning a jagged sun-shaped symbol into the flesh. They hoped the mark of the chapel would teach him a permanent lesson. The pain was excruciating, searing into his mind and leaving a grotesque scar on Aniko that would never fade. During the villagers' time of worship, no one seemed to care about Aniko's new scar. He tried to whisper the scandal to those who visited the chapel, claiming it was the reason for his disfigurement, but not a single villager could be trusted, no matter how genuine their smiles appeared. Many pretended to care, promising to keep his secret, only to report him to the priests the moment they turned away. Each time, Aniko was dragged by his hair back to his room, beaten or worse. Punishments carved scars not only across his body but deep within his mind, reminders of every failed attempt to reveal the truth. Hatred burned in Aniko like acid. Years of fear, pain, and betrayal twisted inside him, and it could no longer be contained. Cold and bright as memories of fire, screams, and the priest's cruelty flooded through him. His chest tightened, his fists ached, and the world narrowed to one thing: retribution. He burst through his wooden door, splinters biting into his hands. Every step down the hall was timed, deliberate. He had studied the priest's routine for years and knew exactly who would fall first. The first two went down without a sound, their keys slipping from their belts into his grasp. Opening the weapon chamber, his eyes found the whip that had once tormented him. He fastened the branding iron once used on his flesh to its tip, turning it into a cruel imitation of a flail. The priests never saw it coming. They fell fast, caught off guard by the fury that seemed to puppet his every move. Their screams and the clash of their resistance echoed through the chapel, but Aniko moved like death, unpredictable and unstoppable. The chapel fell silent, broken only by the sound of blood dripping from the walls and the low hum of burning candles. At the center of the aisle stood the head priest, calm and composed, a faint smirk curling on his lips. Aniko froze for a heartbeat. The air thickened, the candle flame swelled, and the heat began to rise. Under the full moon, the priest's presence seemed to multiply. Aniko knew what that meant. The man could wield incantations, just like Louise, his sister he had sent down the river. That was why the flames on the night of his family's murder had spared the high priest. He had been the one controlling them. The realization did not cool Aniko's fear, it only fed his fury, burning hotter than any fire the priest could conjure. Aniko's fist clenched as he moved like a shadow between the rows of benches. Every strike hit hard and fast. When the distance widened, he lashed out with his whip, each swing measured for maximum force, each strike capable of killing. It moved with terrifying accuracy, as if he had rehearsed every motion in his mind a million times. The weapon cracked through the air, landing just moments too late for the high priest to react. The high priest was strong and terrifyingly fast. He barely moved from the chapel stage, conserving his energy, knowing Aniko would come to him. Fire came to life at his fingertips, casting flickering shadows that accentuated the cool control in his stance. Yet the flames burned less than Aniko expected, a testament to the tolerance his body had built throughout the years. Even so, every strike he landed drew a grunt or forced the priest to stagger, revealing small cracks in his otherwise controlled movements. That should have been enough to shake him, to turn the tide, but instead the high priest's smile widened, slow and unnerving, as if each hit aroused him. Every counter pushed Aniko harder. His body burned with exhaustion, every muscle screaming, but his training and silence was the reason he made it this far. The fight was brutal. With the last of his strength, he unleashed a final swing that tore a chunk from the priest's shoulder, sending him crashing into the concrete wall. The high priest collapsed to the floor, barely clinging to life. As he grasped his final breaths, a cruel, evil smile spread across his face one last time.
That's it. I almost wish you had more to give.
Without hesitation, Aniko grabbed his head through his eye sockets and crushed the high priest's head against the hard concrete floor, over and over, until there was nothing left but a thick, unrecognizable puddle of human flesh. The chapel fell silent except for Aniko's ragged breathing. Incense, sweat, and blood hung heavy in the air. He did not feel victorious. He felt the weight of all he had lost, the emptiness that had shadowed him for years, and the raw, terrifying satisfaction that finally, no one could take it from him again. Then he turned and saw them. The villagers. They stood at the back of the chapel, eyes wide, voices shaking with disgust. They cursed him for his moon-born sister and wished he had died with the rest of his family. He was nothing more than a stain that refused to fade, a mole that kept growing within their holy community. Aniko said nothing. He rose calmly, unhurried, as if the chaos around him no longer existed. Taking the keys from the fallen high priest, he pulled a torch from the wall and turned toward the villagers. Without a word, he walked past them, closed the chapel doors, and locked them. It was his first time outside in 17 years. Behind him, the villagers screamed and pounded on the doors, but to Aniko, it sounded no different than a mosquito buzzing near his ear. He moved through the village slowly, taking in how much had changed without him. From house to house, he gathered bundles of hay and anything else that would burn, tossing them into the streets until every path led back to the chapel. The village became a web of fire waiting to be lit, and at its center, the chapel sat there like a trapped insect. He made a trail of burnables that led to his favorite spot as a child, a hill where he once watched the moon and stars with his parents, awaiting for the arrival of his baby sister. Now, standing there again, he struck the torch and set it ablaze. The fire crawled along the path beside him, reaching the outskirts first, where the houses began to ignite. The villagers were forced to watch as their homes and lives were slowly consumed, the flames creeping inward like a patient predator closing in on its prey. Aniko watched the village burn, a quiet bliss settling over him as the fire consumed everything in its path. The flames crept inward, eventually reaching the chapel walls while the villagers screamed and pounded against the locked doors, their voices fading beneath the roar of the fire. He stood still, unblinking, as if watching an orchestra reach its final note, waiting for the long-awaited silence that had escaped him for so many years. As the last embers smoldered, the sun rose over the horizon. Everything in his life, the villagers, the priests, the death of his family, had been tied to the sun. Yet, the sun itself had done nothing wrong. It had only revealed the cruelty around him. He could fix that. He could gather those who hurt the weak and the moonborn out of jealousy and arrogance. He could welcome them, manipulate them, and gaslight them into believing their pain was enlightenment. They would come thinking they were chosen, but the only light awaiting them would be in the afterlife. A year later, Aniko turned 23. He transformed his pain into purpose, founding a new faith of his own design, named Solara. Aniko's temple was a sunlight sanctuary unlike any other. Flames danced around his throne, drawn to him like moths, each one a testament to the power he wielded over the sun's sacred light. Stained glass in shades of yellow, orange, and red flooded the space with shining light, and a massive sun-like symbol with a face in its center shifted with the time of day. Solara's sun symbol had two forms. At night, the sun's eyes were closed and weeping, and during the day, they opened wide and smiled, watching over the followers with a radiant, almost unsettling benevolence. His temple served as the heart of his faith, a secluded place where his nightly rituals were performed. Aniko traveled often, seeking those he deemed worthy to join him. His offer was simple but irresistible: a month of food, shelter, and guidance, all free of charge, framed as a chance to be touched by the sun itself. For many, the promise was impossible to refuse, and those who accepted would soon find themselves bound by his rules, drawn deeper into his control with every passing day. He welcomed anyone who despised the Moonborn, promising safety, love, and purpose. With a warm smile and a soothing voice, he told them they were family, brothers and sisters bound beneath his light. To his followers, Aniko was the sun itself, the brightest force in the sky guiding them toward a better future. His mask gave him a blinding advantage. Surrounded by candles or stepping into the sunlight, his mask caught and reflected the light, blinding anyone who would meet his gaze and reinforcing the illusion that they were in the presence of something divine. He preached that those touched by the sun were stronger, smarter, and more spiritually blessed, while the Moonborn were weak, twisted, and corrupt. Life, he insisted, could not exist without the sun's light. Some of the things he said were warped echoes of lessons and phrases he had heard growing up, and they often made him visibly tense or angry as the memories resurfaced. His followers assumed it was his hatred for the Moonborn that drove his outbursts, but in truth, he was recalling his past, repeating distorted versions of words he had once been told. Despite Aniko preaching the superiority of the sun, deep inside he felt only revulsion for everyone around him. He could not understand how anyone could despise another simply for their time of birth. The idea was absurd, almost laughable, yet his own trauma chained him to it, and it was this very mindset that had torn his family from him. He swore it would never happen again. He would gather the worst of the worst under his command, taking them for himself and guiding them though falsely, as their leader. He wove a web of false affection around his followers, convincing them that anyone who tried to pull them away from the cult did so only out of fear of their true potential. No one was held by force, yet his manipulation was so thorough that they believed leaving would mean throwing away the greatest opportunity of their lives. He framed it all as a promise of the solar faith. To them, he was a savior. To Aniko, they were nothing more than mindless cattle, their devotion a toy for his control. Aniko's cult thrived on spectacle and ceremony, each ritual carefully designed to appear uplifting while quietly tightening his control. Before dawn, he instructed his followers to climb a mountain and coat themselves in bergamot and lemon oil. Once they reached the top, claiming it was a sacred elixir that would ignite the light within them. As the first rays of the sun touched the mountain, they gathered in a wide circle, faces lifting to greet the rising star. They chanted of strength, purity, and unwavering devotion, their limbs swaying in perfect unison, bodies moving as though ignited by the sun itself. What they didn't know was that the oil made their skin hypersensitive to light. The sun triggered phototoxic reactions, causing redness, inflammation, and in severe cases, blistering and burn-like lesions. Aniko told them it was the manifestation of the sun within them, a divine sign of their transformation. The pain, the burns, even the blistered flesh became proof of their devotion, binding them even tighter to him. Whenever he was questioned about why he did not bear the same marks as his followers, he claimed it was because he had practiced the ritual his entire life, and that the marks naturally faded with time. This was a lie. After nearly 6 hours of constant ritualistic dance, he had them rest while doing their next task. At the sun's peak, Aniko gathered his followers in a large field beneath the blinding sky. He directed them to stare at the sun until it slipped below the horizon, claiming that the sun would help grow their potential, as even plants stay still but grow tremendously under the sun. They lifted their eyes in blind devotion, trusting his sacred teaching, unaware that every passing second stole a little more of their vision. When they cried out in pain, he soothed them with words of false assurance, insisting that the burning was proof of their ocular purification. In the evening, the followers would eat before gathering for the moon's excretion. They were allowed to eat as much as they wished, but were denied water. Aniko would offer them an assortment of dried fruits and meats, claiming the sun had blessed them, and that by consuming only food touched by its light, they would reach enlightenment faster. When the ritual began, he led them into a chamber built like a sauna, flames encircling the walls. There, he commanded them to sweat until their bodies trembled, preaching that the moon ruled water while the sun ruled fire, and that only through fire could their impurities be purged. Each night they sweated until 1 in the morning, only to wake up at 4 for their climb back up the mountain. The purification retreat was said to awaken divine solar energy, a power so radiant it could make the moonborn crumble with a single glare. Only those who survived a full month within Solara could claim such strength. Many never made it to the end, and no one mourned them. The survivors took pride in their endurance, convinced that every fallen member was simply too weak to deserve the light. On the last Sunday of the month, Aniko led them through their ultimate test. Blindfolded, the rest of the members, hands tied in a long chain. They followed him into the desert under the cover of night. He instructed them to lie in the sand and remove their blindfolds only when they felt the sun on their skin. The trial demanded absolute stillness. From sunrise to sunset, they laid in the sand, forbidden to move or even shift their gaze. Their task was simple yet cruel. Stare into the sun without blinking or turning away. To falter was to be rejected by its light, never again permitted to seek its favor. Once Aniko gave his instructions, he left them behind, vanishing into the horizon and leaving his followers alone beneath the burning sky. The desert and the sun did the rest. Each cry for mercy, each collapse into the sand became proof of his doctrine. As night fell, those who still breathed were left behind, starving and abandoned beneath the cold stars, unsure where to go, yet certain they had touched something divine. It was exactly as Aniko intended. In blindness, they could finally see him, and in death, they could finally serve nothing. This is just the beginning of a future arc for my manga, Silverlight Scars. If you want sneak peeks or updates, consider joining my channel members. Your support would mean the world and helps me create videos like this one. A huge thank you to my current channel members. If you made it to the end, comment a character or OC who suffered as much as Aniko. I would love to read them. Anywho, have yourselves a lovely day. Bye.